Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Tianjin guest house. As Modi arrived in China for the 2025 Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, President Xi has said that last year's Kazan meeting marked the restart of China-India relations, highlighting progress in exchanges and cooperation. He stressed that both nations, as ancient civilizations and major voices of the global South, both must strengthen trust, expand cooperation, and ensure peaceful coexistence, while preventing the border issues from overshadowing the broader relationship. Prime Minister Modi has noted that relations are back on a positive track, with the border stable and direct flights set to resume soon. He underlined that China and India are partners, not adversaries, and has said that their cooperation could make the 21st century truly an Asian century. Let's listen into what the Indian Foreign Secretary has said in the press briefing in Tianjin about Prime Minister Modi's bilateral meeting.
The Prime Minister shared with President Xi Jinping today that it is important also to look at the issue of trade and trade deficit from the broad strategic direction and engagement between the two countries. Growing trade between the two countries and narrowing of the deficit will contribute to a change in perception in the relationship as well. But this is a discussion that is going on at many levels. It's between governments, between businesses, between entities that are involved in the trade, and we will have to see how it evolves going forward. On your question related to...
Now for this discussion, we are joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. He's a former diplomat, and Scott Faulkner. He's the head of Eagle Enterprises, a security firm. Now, thank you both for staying with us. I would like to go to Ambassador. How do deepening now India-China ties, particularly around economic and also cooperation on trades, reshape the strategic landscape in the Asia?
Meeting, which is very important, which took place between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping. Our Prime Minister reportedly said that India is committed to taking India-China ties forward based on mutual trust and respect. And Xi Jinping also reciprocated the sentiments and said that if India and China commit to being partners and not rivals and provide development opportunities instead of threats, then China and India relations will flourish and will move forward steadily. However, as I had said earlier, while India and China have economic incentives to collaborate against US tariffs, deep strategic rivalry and long-standing border disputes persist. Both sides have been trying to come closer together. In fact, Russia has been playing an important role in this regard also, because Russia wants the revival of the RIC dialogue, which is actually the Russia, India, China trilateral. But the fact remains that there are fundamental problems, particularly relating to the border issues. And these prevent the sort of closer cooperation which the Russians have been trying to promote. And the Chinese also know it. And the Chinese have been trying to push the line that we should move the relationship ahead, regardless of the border issues. But India had been saying all along that the border issue is very important and should be resolved. And this is a very consequential for the overall relationship to go forward. So there are some differences in perceptions. Let's see how things shape out. But the resolution of the border issue is not that simple. It's very complex, very intricate. China covets a lot of Indian territory, and it already occupies a lot of Indian territory. So how do we resolve this issue? The Chinese side keeps issuing maps which show Indian territory, which is Arunachal Pradesh and parts of Ladakh, as being Chinese territory. So this sort of policy is not being helpful. And unless the Chinese change their approach and show sincerity for settling the border issue, the relationship cannot go forward beyond a certain point. Of course, at the moment, it is proceeding in a positive direction, particularly in the economic context, because of the tariffs which have been imposed by President Trump on India and the tariffs which he is planning to impose on China also. So there is some sort of drawing together between India and China. But as I said, the fundamental border problem remains unresolved, and that will be an impediment for taking the relationship forward.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing that. We have another guest,
Shubham
Robinder Sachdev. He's an international affairs expert. Robinder, what is your take on that? Do you agree with Ambassador Dayal that there are still fundamental differences between China and India, and it might not, that the relationship is, though it seems like it's getting warmer, they might still rise up?
Thank you. Yeah, I think absolutely right what Ambassador Dayal is saying. I mean, the one aspect is definitely the long-standing boundary dispute. And the other, the big picture which he points out is in terms of strategic competition between the two countries. However, I would like to point out one thing. Just assume for a moment that Trump was not the president, someone else was. Let's say Kamala Harris had won, right? Now, the point is that between China and India, the relations started thawing a little bit last year, 1 year ago, on sidelines of the BRICS. So this inch by inch progress of relations between India and China has been continuing since then. We can trace it down. And if Trump was not the president, if the tariffs were not there, too many ifs, but the SCO is an annual affair, routine. This year it's happening in China. So assuming there was nothing, no context of Trump and tariffs, if Modi had gone for this meeting, I think still progress would have been made on China-India relations to some extent. However, yes, with the now clouds of tariffs, maybe there is a little bit more urgency, little bit more strategic thought behind it. So on the one hand, it does seem that India is kind of, cozying up to China maybe more because of the Trump tariffs. Partly that's true, but partly that's a process which had been going on. But yes, to the point of fact that the long-standing boundary dispute and the strategic contest, in my mind, I have a very theoretical, a very ideal model which may never happen. But my point is, to Ambassador Dayal's point and to your point, between India and China in the boundary, keep aside Aksai Chin, one large chunk of land which China occupies of India, and the issue, it's our Arunachal which China claims, forget those two. In the border of about 3,500 kilometers, there were 40 to 45 disputed points of varying sizes. We don't even know because those regions have not been even mapped. But supposing we could identify those disputed areas and designate them as gardens of peace. Neither yours nor ours, let's declare them to be buffers. It could solve, or it could be a step towards a long-lasting solution to the boundary dispute. But of course, it will never be easy because neither our side military of India, neither the Chinese army would want to give up some of their vantage points and various other aspects. But if you were to think notionally, that could be something, if it could be addressed seriously, but with political will and intent. And we would look forward to seeing that intent and that intent coming from China, then maybe some progress could be made. Otherwise, we would have a border management mechanism which would maybe gloss over the issues time to time, but the bigger problem will remain.
Thank you very much. That is very interesting and fresh to our ears. Thank you very much again to all our guests, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and Scott Faulkner, as well as Robinder Sachdev, for joining us and sharing your insight throughout the topic. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister